For more than 40 years, CNN has offered a front row seat to history in the making.
Why am I under arrest, sir?
It's a hoax, a setup.
Join us as we turn back the clock.
2 explosions.
Killed Osama bin Laden.
And watch the stories that have defined our time.
There are no words.
O.J. Simpson.
This is CNN's Rewind. It was January 1986. Americans had just been introduced to Nintendo. Back to the Future was in theatres. And the Cold War was beginning to warm up. Meanwhile, NASA's shuttle program was bringing the dream of space travel closer to home.
Here today to announce the first private citizen passenger in the history of spaceflight.
But on a cold January morning, disaster would ground the ambitions of spaceflight for years to come.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
Oh my goodness.
The space race began in earnest after World War II. Both the United States and the Soviet Union perfected rockets and missiles. From the beginning, the space program was more than a scientific experiment. It was a matter of national pride and national security. With the U.S. on top in the space race, NASA let military considerations take a back seat and concentrated on science. But now, Congress wanted a return on their space investment. Billions of dollars had been poured into the NASA project. The 70s found NASA researchers back at the drawing board, working almost non-stop to develop this space vehicle that could be launched into space and returned much like an airplane. On November 24th, 1980, the first space shuttle rolled out of the hangar. Its name, Columbia. It marked a new era in space exploration. Since then, 3 other shuttlecrafts have been built: Challenger, Discovery, and Atlantis.
Today I'm directing NASA to begin a search in all of our elementary and secondary schools and to choose as the first citizen passenger in the history of our space program, one of America's finest, a teacher.
Applications to be the first civilian in space will be distributed through all U.S. public, private, and parochial schools. NASA officials will select 1 civilian astronaut and 1 backup for several months of pre-flight training.
The teacher who will be going into space, Krista McAuliffe. Is that you?
McAuliffe was faced with training. She clearly relished the challenge. She said she hoped to inspire others to reach out and try new and different things.
One of the things that I would like to do when I go aboard the shuttle is to bring back the wonder of it all.
Just seeing Mrs. McAuliffe out raking her yard or something, not floating around in space.
First it was the wind, then it was a frozen bolt, then it was the wind again. As a result, the Space Shuttle Challenger is still sitting on Launch Pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center. The weather once again ruining NASA's show.
What the country's space agency has learned in recent weeks, as well as the rest of us, is that this is a difficult general time of year to try and launch a space shuttle.
Patience has been a key element around the NASA operation all this week. We're going to join Tom and Tier now. Once again, just getting down to about 3 minutes, and they think they can do it.
They are counting. The ice is cleared away, and Challenger should be going away very soon. Let's go down to the Kennedy Space Center and take a look at Challenger sitting on the pad as they continue the countdown. They started the auxiliary power units about a minute ago, and that is one of the major milestones to continuing the countdown.
And counting. Gimbal checks now complete.
Let's go for ET-LO2 pressurization.
External tank liquid oxygen pressurization is started, and purging of the shuttle main engines is terminated.
I hope it takes off this time.
Let's go for ET-LO2 pressurization.
Gimbal checks now complete.
During the 6 days in space, the astronauts are going to release a $100 million satellite and another one called Halley-Spartan that will study the comet. But the highlight on this mission is the including in the flight of Krista McAuliffe, a 37-year-old high school social studies teacher from Concord, New Hampshire. She will teach from space on Friday now. If they are able to get off today, they will have live coverage here on CNN of her giving lessons to students on the ground.
I hope it goes.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Please go off. I want it to.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Now controlling.
Roger, roll, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading down range. Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles for most of the flight, 104%. We'll throttle down to 65% shortly. Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles.
So the 25th Space Shuttle mission is now on the way after more delays than NASA cares to count. This morning it looked as though they were not going to be able to get off.
1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
Looks like a couple of the solid rocket boosters blew away from the side of the shuttle in an explosion.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction. We have no downlink.
Oh, please. Where is it?
We have the explosion on tape here.
All right. Oh, goodness.
We're awaiting word. They're holding their breath just, I'm sure, as everyone else is. You saw it just a few moments ago, about 45 seconds after liftoff, a huge fireball in the sky.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded. Flight director confirms that. We are looking at checking with the recovery forces to see what can be done at this point. Contingency procedures are in effect.
In what appears to be a major catastrophe in America's space program, Challenger, only seconds after leaving the launch pad, according to NASA, has exploded in midair. No word yet on if there are any survivors. You can see what appears to be a ship off of the Kennedy Space Center. Just saw a splash in the water. Don't know if that was one of the solid rocket boosters or part of the shuttle. On board the space shuttle this morning, Commander Francis Dick Scobie, co-pilot Michael Smith, Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Jeffrey Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe, and Ellison Azuka. Let's take another look now, just seconds into the launch. This is before the solid rockets were lit.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, roll, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading downrange.
Tom, everything looks normal to this point?
I don't want to see it again.
Everything looks normal to this point. It's when the long-range tracking cameras took over, and you could see an extreme close-up as the solid rocket boosters appeared to be breaking away from the shuttle and then explode. It comes up in just a few seconds here.
Let's see it again.
Running normally.
There.
You could see right before the explosion at the external tank where it attaches to the shuttle, a flame appeared to break out between the external tank and the shuttle.
Tom, this has never happened before. I know you are aware that there are contingency plans for such an event. Because it's never happened before, I think possibly many people even involved are not aware what they are. Do they have ships standing by?
There are recovery ships standing by, and they do go through procedures for launch aborts. There is worst-case scenario. We have CNN's John Zarella, who is at the Kennedy Space Center, on the live line now. John, you could, I'm sure, see it from your vantage point, even 9 miles down. Describe the scene there.
Here now at the Kennedy Space Center, everybody's just stunned. They're in shock. It's a situation where people are just sort of standing around in just bewilderment at this point. And of course, we're not getting any information from here any more than what you are. Only just what we have just witnessed and what we've seen, this tragic incident.
Well, the explosion that we saw just a few minutes ago, we're back now to a live picture from a helicopter above the launch area. This is Mission Control in Houston. For the last 4 or 5 minutes, the audio channel from Mission Control has been silent. Not a single word has been spoken while the rescue efforts, if there are any to be made, are underway. Let's go to the White House now and Larry speaks.
And shocked at what he has just seen replayed on television concerning the shuttle launch. We do not have any more information than is being provided to the public at this time. The way the Federal President found out about it is he was in the Oval Office. The Vice President and the Foreign Policy Advisor, John Poindexter, came in with others and informed the President that the news had just broken. We immediately adjourned our Oval Office meeting and went into an adjoining room, the President's study, where there's a television, and the President then began to review television reports of the explosion there shortly after the launch. So once again, the President is concerned. He is saddened. He is very anxious to have more information on it. At the moment, as I say, we're learning most of our information from what the public is getting.
What is anything said about the fact that the teacher was on board this plane?
Well, it was something that was on all of our minds, that we did have the first teacher in space, really the first civilian, so to speak, other than our members of Congress who have flown in space, and certainly that's on our mind.
Tom, we've just learned from a wire report that the students at Christa McAuliffe's high school in New Hampshire were watching the liftoff along with hundreds of thousands of other Americans.
Students filled the Concord High School auditorium to watch the launch. As Challenger lifted off, they shouted, clapped, blew horns. At first, few realized what had happened. Then, the fact that what began as a joyous event had turned to tragedy hit them.
They said on TV that it blew up and everybody started crying. That's when I realized what happened.
The word of the Challenger catastrophe struck Washington like a winter thunderbolt. The House of Representatives was in session at 11:38 Eastern Time this morning, but not for long. The House chaplain, very quickly upon learning of the news, offered a prayer for those off the coast of Florida. James Ford presented the wishes and the will of the House to a chilled and cold House of Representatives.
And at this special moment, let us remember in silent prayer those who were involved in the spacecraft shuttle accident just a few minutes ago off Florida. Let us pray.
Then the Speaker, Tip O'Neill, adjourned.
Bob, when we come back to you, I want to take a pause for 10 seconds of silence. We'll go to out of 14 and 10 seconds of silence, and you can say that if you want to.
Challenger, as far as it affects the nation's capital now, Bob.
Thank you, Reed. And we will pause now at CNN in our coverage for 10 seconds of silence. Three minutes before launch time, correspondent Tom Mintier joined us on the set to begin our live coverage of the launch. Tom.
Bob, the only concern that NASA really showed this morning was with the icicles, some of them 2 foot long, and it might be proper to go back and look and think about the situation with that. They were very concerned. They called an emergency meeting at the Kennedy Space Center to discuss whether the ice on the pad area could possibly damage the shuttle on liftoff. NASA has never gone through ice in the launch pad area before, and they decided at that meeting that it posed no danger, and they went ahead with the countdown. Associate Administrator Jess Moore previously, when pressured about NASA being so far behind schedule this year already with 2 missions only flown, stated emphatically that we will never compromise safety standards for schedule. Those were his words just a few days ago.
Charles, of course, the President has a public duty to perform tonight his State of the Union address at 9 Eastern Time. It seems, does it not, almost inevitable that this is going to cast a long and mournful shadow over even that?
Well, the President had hoped to make the kind of speech that was being described here as visionary, laying out his hopes for this country into the next century. I think it is fair to guess, in fact, Mr. Speaks sort of indicated that the President would be compelled to have something to say about this tragedy, and I think we will hear that tonight. Yes, it does indeed cast a pall on this event.
Among the Americans who saw the devastation that struck America's space program and 7 people aboard the space shuttle were the husband of 37-year-old New Hampshire schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe and her 9-year-old daughter.
Also at the Cape, or just actually 3.5 miles from the Cape, watching as it happened this morning, were Krista McAuliffe's 2 parents, Edward and Grace Corrigan, were watching from a VIP area some 3.5 miles away. The wire services are reported observing the 2 of them hugging and sobbing as they saw the explosion aboard the shuttle.
These are the spectators that were watching.
Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second, altitude 4.3.
This is raw, unedited video, just sent via satellite.
Just throttling up, 3 engines now, 104%. Challenger, go and throttle up.
The picture you were just seeing was Krista McAuliffe's parents watching in horror. These are the students from her school. Many of them probably had their view blocked just as we did with the television cameras, with just a huge fireball and a huge cloud of smoke. They may not realize yet what has happened. You see concern etched on their faces. The breath that they've been holding released. And then the realization sets in. that something is wrong.
That shower in the back there? Something came apart. When the stage came apart.
Oh my God.
At that point, all that remained was...
The flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded. Flight director confirms that. We are looking at checking with the recovery forces to see what can be done at this point. Contingency procedures are in effect.
Gave me the wrong stuff.
Families of the astronauts normally in the grandstands.
Tom, as John Zarrella pointed out from the Cape earlier, when all of us first saw the blast, there was a moment of stunned silence and disbelief. Many people perhaps did confuse it with the, is it the booster rockets?
The solid rocket booster separation, which
but it was
occurs a little later.
It was far too early and far too big an explosion.
Tom, the area that we were just watching...
That is the VIP section, invited guests for this launch. I myself received an invitation from Michael Smith, who was the pilot on this flight, to sit in these same bleachers and to watch his launch. Michael Smith has been a guest here on CNN before on our launch coverage and sent me a special invitation to go.
That would then include family members of the astronauts, friends?
It includes family members, school children from New Hampshire.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering. 19 years ago, almost to the day, we lost 3 astronauts in a terrible accident on the ground. But we've never lost an astronaut in flight. We've never had a tragedy like this. And perhaps we've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle. But they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes. We mourn their loss as a nation together. The families of the 7, we cannot bear, as you do, the full impact of this tragedy. But we feel the loss, and we're thinking about you so very much. Your loved ones were daring and brave, and they had that special grace, that special spirit that says, give me a challenge, and I'll meet it with joy. They had a hunger to explore the universe and discover its truths. They wished to serve, and they did. They served all of us. And I want to say something to the school children of America who were watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them.
The shuttle's busiest schedule ever will be delayed while investigators figure out what went wrong.
The Challenger would have flown successfully if the weather at Cape Canaveral had been warm. NASA was not communicating with itself and was keeping some problems secret from top management.
West Berlin. O.J. Simpson. There are no words.
Made history.
The United States killed Osama bin Laden.
2 explosions.
Donald Trump wins. It's a hoax. A setup. Why am I under arrest?